Hello, Link 341. This is the third part of this installment of the videos. We are about to finish this lecture very quickly. Before we do that, I want to show you the website here where you can check the handouts and the allophones of English. There will be some more handouts upcoming, but the allophones of English are here, which you can use for your narrative transcription exercise, which I will explain all about and give you the details in another document. So some of the things we talked about are here, and some of the things we will talk about are also here. One of the concepts we will talk about is Canadian raising as well, and we talked about aspiration with voiceless stops. So you should be familiar with those, at least to some extent. The rest we will mention, or we will just list them here. The chapter, I think the second chapter in your course book also has these. So without further ado, we will move on to the patterns of Canadian English, which differs from the patterns of British English. I named it here British English, but it's really a English that is spoken in Australia as well, and New Zealand, and so on, so forth, and some parts of North America, like the East Coast of North America. So one of the things to mention about the pattern is there is an interesting rule regarding the production of R's in some English dialects. For example, in Canadian English, you say care instead of care, as in British English, in park instead of park, read instead of read, which is the same here, other instead of other, ride, again the same pattern, carrot instead of carrot, and finally cart instead of cart. You might want to guess what's the pattern here, and let's say I'll give you a minute, you can pause the video, but I want to show you a video clip as well, which kind of illustrates this pattern as well, where the R emerges in Canadian English all the time, but in British English or English variant, it does not. It emerges without this R in many circumstances, in many contexts, even though in writing we have it, right? So yeah, the clip is right here. It is from a Super Bowl commercial, and let's see it.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
He's not your back car in there.
No, sir.
Look at these two troublemakers.
Hey, Johnny, how are you?
Wicked car. Is that new?
Yeah, it's a Sonata. Let me pack it.
Oh, you're not fitting your car in there.
Chris, stop being a smarty pants, all right? Look who's got Smart Pack.
Smart pack.
Just hit the clicker, car packs itself. It's smart. It's wicked smart. And I can pack it anywhere.
How about Dorchester?
Packed it. Foxborough. Packed it.
The garden?
Packed it. Saugus? Packed it.
Swampscott?
Revere?
The harbor?
Are you kidding me? I packed it and then unpacked it.
You unpacked it?
Kid. Game changer.
That Sonata ain't got no driver.
That's all right. He's got Smart Pack.
Hey, you can back there.
He's got smart pack.
Hey, whoa, it's a big pop.
Quick as mud.
This is a ghost car.
A better way to park, only available on the all-new Sonata with remote smart parking assist.
Sorry about that, your bigness.
You guys know anything? I had no idea.
Okay, yeah. So this is a commercial about the Hyundai Sonata. Some of you might be driving this car, or car, as they say it. So you've probably noticed that there is John Krasinski, who is parking the car, is saying this smart pack and pack a car. without actually producing the R, while in Canadian English, you would normally do so. So yes, my question to you, do you see any patterns? Well, let me tell you, the rules are the following. R surfaces as R when it precedes vowels. So for example, examples are reed and carrot. So when it precedes vowels, it has to surface as R in many words, right? Especially the start of words. R surfaces as schwa when it appears at the end of a syllable or word. Examples care and other. Actually, in British English or English, care and other. Then finally, R makes a preceding vowel long when it appears before a consonant in the same syllable, such as park, caught, and therefore you don't have R. R does not appear there. Instead of that, it makes this vowel long. This R here is called prevocalic R sometimes because it precedes vowels. Well, these two are called non-prevocalic R's. So these are the rules, and these rules distinguish the majority of vowel or the majority of varieties of English. And these varieties can in general be one of the things that we noticed in the perhaps in the clip is also the pronunciation of this little guy here, which is pack, ka. It's a little bit nasal, but yes, that's how they produce it. Instead of because this is a commercial that probably displays or exhibits the Bostonian accent, right? So we've noticed the rules here, and the basic distinction between the English varieties is in rhotic and non-rhotic accents or dialects. English is divided between rhotic dialects and non-rhotic dialects. Rhotic denoting the R flavor of these accents or dialects, especially, that's why it's called like that. The rhotic dialects are Canadian English, General American, Irish English, and Scots English, while the non-rhotic ones are English or British English, I guess, here, Australian English, and some areas of American English or American East Coast English. In Canadian English, I don't know of any dialect that does not have R's, but if you know some, let me know. The thing is about this that why is this so, right? Well, because before 1700s, all of the dialects were rhotic dialects, right? After 1700s, for some reason, British started, I guess, higher classes started speaking without this R, and it just grew upon them, right? Which means that they stopped using R in certain contexts that we saw on the previous slides. In which context, right? When it appears at the end of a syllable or word and preceding a vowel, right? When it appears before a consonant in the same syllable. So as in here, like park, so just one syllable, right? So the thing about Australian English and some areas, and New Zealand English, for example, in some areas of the American East Coast, is in the fact that they retained this feature of British English because they were colonized later than Canadians, and then North America, or just the the indigenous people, right? So they came later to these parts of the world, and that spread later when it's already when the dialect was non-rhotic already. The American coast is connected financially, economically, and in origin to England, especially Boston and New York area. So it makes sense for them to have this non-rhotic dialect as well. One interesting fact is about England itself is that the change occurred from 1950s to 2016, which this graphics shows. For example, in 1950, the majority of people, or not the majority, a great deal of people said that they would produce R in arm. So they said, yes, this part here that is supposed to be Cornwall and surrounding areas around it, whereby the Ireland is over here and Scotland is over there. So it makes sense for these parts of the northern England to produce R in arm. However, this non-rhoticity has become a lot more prevalent throughout England over the past couple of generations. So it basically lost in the majority of the country. The interesting pattern is in that the Vikings were really settling those areas where rhotic dialects were observed. So in this part, Wessex and its dependencies, and Northumbria, the Danelaw as well was those were different kinds of tribes. If you played Stronghold, I think, classic strategy game, you probably know about these, but not to bother you with these historical details. It's just a coincidence that the rhoticity occurs in the same place, basically, or non-rhoticity, right? Another interesting feature is taken from a website called Overheard in New York. It's supposedly a website where people just write what they heard in New York, right? So there was a lady with older lady with heavy accent pointing to a closed store. She says, "What's that?" And young lady says, "I'm not sure." Old lady says, "Is that a pawn shop?" And young lady startled says, "No, that looks like a pawn shop." Old lady, "That's what I said, a pawn shop." Young lady relieved, "Oh, I thought you said a pawn shop." "No, I said a pawn, not pawn." "Oh, you say them exactly the same." "I do?" "Yeah, say ah, oh. Now say or. Oh, no, it's or with an R. That's what I said. Oh." So this lady basically says them or produces pawn or pawn shop in the same way as you should produce pawn shop, right? So basically, phonemically, in her mind, she has one category with an R, but she does not produce it. So she just perceives it in her mind phonemically as this O, while as this difference. So there is difference in her head. However, when producing these two words, she produces them in the same way. So that's difference between phonology and phonetics in the sense that the phonetic implementation of what you what's there in the mental phonological inventory or repertoire is different from is different, right, on this level of phonetics and phonology. And that's why we need to be aware of these differences that exist among the English varieties, right? So I don't want to bother you with the vowel systems that there are, but we'll just move along or move to the Canadian raising. Canadian raising is a very popular term, and it is quite prominent in Canada. It is a case when I diphthong becomes a. It raises. This a raises to schwa. And why do we say that it raises? Well, because it's supposedly here, right? And then it raises to schwa in this context. So that's why we call it Canadian raising. And there are some examples for this with I and with ow. With ow is even more prominent, I think so, and I've heard it so many times. So yeah, as I said, raising because low to mid. This happens only in certain sound environments. For example, instead of saying out, you say out, but you say loud. Instead of saying rice, you say rice. Instead of, but you say ride. Instead of saying pipe, you say pipe, and still you do say bribe. So in the same manner, you say like and rise. And I hope you can notice the pattern, or pause the video and try to figure out a pattern when it emerges or when it appears and when it does not appear. So basically, sorry. So basically, I becomes a and ow becomes o in Canadian English. So yeah, you can tell me what's the pattern, and we can talk about it on the next in the next lesson, because it's quite obvious here. You just have to look at the final consonant. This is an example of American and Canadian pronunciation of these two. This is to illustrate this difference between Canadian and American. And for example, Dr. Steve Winters produces house like this.
House.
Okay. Yeah, never a good idea.
Out.
And this is just the vowel part.
Out. Out.
And his student John produces this like
House. Out. Out. Out.
Hope you can hear the difference. A typical raising, but what about howl?
Howl. Out. Out.
Howl. Out. Out.
Out. Out.
It's practically the same, maybe louder
Out.
with Dr. Winters.
Bike.
Bike or bake.
Bike. Bike.
Bike. Bike.
Again, very different. So bike and house are different, but howl and bile are not.
Bile. Bot.
Bile. Bot. Bot.
Bot. Bot. Bot.
Yeah. So we can notice the difference between, I'm going to show again, between these and no difference between these, right? So what's the pattern there, right? And that's up to you to find out. I think it's quite obvious if you just take a look at the slide here. I want to show you Joy's vowels, or just one vowel and one word. Joy is also a a former PhD student in linguistics. He, of course, is a doctor in linguistics now, and he is from Calgary, right? I did an interview with Joy on conlanging. It's fun if you want to just listen to it, it's okay. If not, that's okay too. And find out what's conlanging, right? But the point is to listen, and let's hear Joy sing out. Okay.
It was the brainchild of a person named Sai, who wanted to be able to host a language creation conference, recognizing there were people out there. A language creation conference, recognizing there were people out there who engage in this.
So it's very obvious out there, right? It's an obvious pattern. You can also compare. Yeah, I'll move this. You can also compare Canadian hot and hot. I hope you can see the difference between hot, or hear the difference between hot and hot. It's a subtle difference, but it's a difference between these two.
Bob.
Or
Oh.
yeah. So one is rounded, one is not. And lastly, sometimes
House.
this Canadian raising is not observed with every speaker in Canada, right? Or with every speaker of Canadian English, and you can hear it very clearly here with Amber.
House. Howl. Howl. House.
Yeah. The last thing I want to show you is something that was also overheard in New York, and that's from one of my favorite TV shows, and that's practically one of the older TV shows there, The Sopranos. The Sopranos was a TV show about the mafia boss who has some family issues and who has panic attacks and needs to deal with a lot of things in his life. And it's quite a good show, to be honest. This is it says a hilarious sit down with New York Mafia, meaning they talk about serious stuff. And in this particular case, they talk about what to do with the person who offended another person's wife. This is the boss, one of the bosses of the family, and let's hear it out, and I'll point out to you some of the non-rhoticity or non-rhotic parts.
I've insulted John's wife.
It's correct.
Who's on the wire now?
Who's on the Y now? Without R, right?
Correct, right? I've insulted John's wife.
It's correct.
Who's on the wire now?
It's John Corrado.
Oh. So what did Rob do exactly?
He made a very hurtful remark. It's not worth repeating.
Okay, not worth repeating still, but this next segment, it's not important, is very conspicuous.
It's not important. Let's just agree it was. He made a very hurtful remark. It's not worth repeating. It's not important. Let's just agree.
Yeah. So you can clearly hear this non-rhoticity in the Mafia's dialect. So that would be all for today's three-part lesson. Thank you very much, and be on the outlook for some emails from me.